Imagine the following situation. During a common session to quit smoking, your mother begins to speak in languages she has never studied. From his mouth come secrets of forgotten civilizations, medieval Latin corners and battle shouts of past revolutions. This is the story that unfolds in Mexico City, in a muffled March 1976. The morning air carries the familiar smell of newly made tortillas mixed with the smoke of the buses that cut the Insurgent Avenue. Ana Lucia Morales, a 42-year-old woman, dark eyes and hands marked by work, hastily walks through the stone streets of the historic center. 15 years ago, she supports her family selling spices and dried peppers in the San Juan market. Her two sons, Carlos, 10, and Maria Elena, from 14, for months ask her to drop her cigarette. The delicate cigarettes that smoke from the 20s already steal his breath, especially in the long working hours, where the strong smell of chili chipotle and cumin mixes with heavy air. "Tomorrow I stop," promises every night while lighting the last cigarette in the small courtyard of his home in Colonia Doctors. But tomorrow never arrives. Therefore, it is now facing the number 47 of Rua Regina, observing the worn-out sign that announces, Dr. Alonso Bernal, Clinical Hypnosis. His comadre Esperanza, who surpassed alcoholism with hypnosis, assured that this man did miracles. "It's a mind, Ana," she had said as they prepared hibiscus water in the kitchen. "The doctor puts you to sleep a little, and you get out of there without smoking again." Ana Lucia touches the bell with trembling hands. He never believed much of these sleeping things, but he is desperate. Cigarettes are increasingly expensive, and Carlos dreams of entering the preparatory school. She needs that money for tuition. Dr. Alonso Bernal is a man of about 50, well-groomed gray beard and a calm voice that conveys security. Its office is on the second floor of a colonial building, with high ceilings and thick walls that keep the environment fresh even in the hot afternoons of March. "Mrs. Morales," he says, offering a worn green velvet armchair. "Hypnosis is not magic. It is just a way to dialogue directly with the subconscious, where the habits we want to modify are rooted." Ana Lucia settles in the armchair, feeling the soft texture of the fabric under her fingers. The office smells of copals, incense and old books. On the walls, university diplomas and black and white photographs show people who seem asleep. "Does it hurt?" asks, in a hesitant voice. "No way. It will be like a deep nap. When you wake up, the urge to smoke will have decreased a lot, or even missing." The doctor lights up a small lamp that projects gold circles on the ceiling. "Focus on this light. Take a deep breath. Feel like your eyelids get heavy, very heavy." Ana Lucia obeys. The doctor's voice seems to distance itself, as if it came from the bottom of a tunnel. "Your shoulders relax. The breath gets slower." The noise of traffic on Regina Street becomes an almost imperceptible murmur. "Very well, Ana Lucia. Now you are in a state of deep relaxation. Think of cigarettes. When was the first time you smoked?" But the answer that comes out of your lips is not expected. His voice changes, becomes more serious, with a strange accent he never had before. "Cigarettes? We don't know these white smokesticks. Here, in Tenochtitlan, we only burn copal to honor the gods." Dr. Bernal almost drops his notebook. "In 20 years of practice with hypnosis, I had never heard anything like that." "Tenochtitlan? What are you talking about?" Ana Lucia, with her eyes closed, continues to talk to that voice that is not yours. "I'm Itzel, the biggest temple Tlaquilo. My hands know the Amati paper, and my eyes see the sacred forms that others do not understand. The smoke we know is the one that leads our prayers to Quetzalcoatl." His hands move in the air, as if painting or writing on an invisible surface. The fingers trace complex geometric shapes with precision that surprises the doctor. The city floats on water like a golden lotus flower. From the top of the larger temple, I can see the chinampas that feed our people, the channels where they pass canoes loaded with flowers and cocoa. The air smells the damp land and the incense of ground jade we burn. At dawn, Dr. Bernal feels a shiver through his column. That simple woman, a spice saleswoman with only complete elementary school, describes in technical details to the old Tenochtitlan, using words in Nahuatl that he himself is unaware. "What year are we in?" asks, with a trembling voice. It is the year 13 Kona, in the last Tanalpwali before the arrival of the Vine of the Large Waters. Moctezuma Xocoyotzin still rules Jade Palace, but the omens speak of terrible changes. The priests saw blood in the obsidian mirrors. Ana Lucia begins to whisper something in a melodic but completely unknown language. His words flow as music, and although the doctor does not understand one syllable, he feels that they carry an ancestral knowledge. After 10 minutes that look like an eternity, the woman shuts up. His breathing returns to normal, and his face recovers the usual expression. Dr. Bernal tells up to 5 and snaps his fingers. "Mrs. Morales, wake up." She opens her eyes slowly, blinks a few times and gets up from her armchair. "It's over, doctor?" "It worked. I don't feel any difference." Dr. Bernal watches her silent for a few seconds. "You know it's a tlaquilo." "One what?" "No. I never heard that word." "And do you know what Tanalpwali means?" Ana Lucia looks at him with strangeness. "Doctor, I don't understand any of these things from the Indians. I barely finished the primary and spent my whole life working in the market." "Why are you asking me that?" That night Dr. Bernal can't sleep. In his mahogany desk, in the yellowish light of the lamp, he repeatedly reviews the notes of the session with Ana Lucia. 20 years of experience in clinical hypnosis taught him to distinguish fantasy from something deeper, but he had witnessed any logical explanation. "Tlaquilo," said Ana Lucia. "Itzel, Tlaquilo of the major temple." At 6 in the morning, unable to wait more, take the phone and dial the number of his old friend, Dr. Eduardo Matos Moctezuma, archaeologist of the National Institute of Anthropology and History. "Eduardo, sorry to call any time soon, but I need to ask something about the Aztecs." "What is exactly a tlaquilo?" On the other end of the line, a yawn followed by a laugh is heard. "Alonso, where you took this? Since when are you interested in prehistory civilizations, Alonso?" asked Eduardo, still yawning. A tlaquilo was a specialized scribe, someone who dominated the Nahua pictographic writing. They were very respected in Tenochtitlan, especially those who worked in the largest temple. "But tell me, why this question at 6 in the morning? It is complicated to explain by phone. Can't you come to my office this afternoon? I think you need to hear something important." Meanwhile, Ana Lucia woke up at her home in the colony doctors with a strange feeling of having dreamed intensely, although she did not remember any specific dreams. He prepared an olla coffee in his small kitchen, where the smell of piloncillo and cinnamon mingled with the scent of the tortillas his neighbor was already roasting in comal. "The strangest thing was that, for the first time in over 20 years, I didn't feel like smoking. The delicate pack that always carried on the market apron remained intact. When Carlos offered her lighting a cigarette after coffee, as she did every morning, she just shook her head. "Are you okay, Mom?" asked the son, surprised. "Yes, piss, I just don't want to smoke." "How strange, isn't it?" In the San Juan market, Ana Lucia set up her stand as usual, bags of chili guajillo, ancho, and chipotle, cumin packages, black pepper and achievement. But something had changed. The smells he knew 15 years ago now caused him strange sensations, like echoes of memories that were not his own. At noon, Dona Carmen, her oldest client, arrived in search of spices for a mole polenta. "Ana, I need Ceylon cinnamon, not that Chinese type who sell around," said the elegant woman who had learned to cook with the Santa Rosa nuns in Puebla. Ana Lucia took a cinnamon rod and unknowingly why she smelled it deeply. Suddenly his face turned. The eyes were glazed, and his voice gained a different, more refined tone. "This cinnamon comes from far away, sister. It was brought by Manila's galleons, along with the Chinese silk and the spices of the moles. In the convent, We used the chocolate we served the benefactors. Dona Carmen retreated, surprised. Ana, what convent are you talking about? But Ana Lucia continued, as if her voice came from another time. Sore hope taught me that the real cinnamon should break clean, without barbs. Acapulco merchants sometimes mix it with bark from other trees to earn more, but we know the difference. At the convent of Santa Catarina de Sena, in Puebla, we only used the best for the chocolate of the Mr. Bishop. The woman was changed. Ana Lucia blinked several times and smiled, returning to normal. Does this cinnamon fit, Dona Carmen? It is of good quality. Ana, you just talked about a convent in Puebla. How do you know that? Asked the client confused. What convent? Answered Ana Lucia, strange. I've never been to Puebla, Dona Carmen. Are you feeling well? That afternoon, Dr. Bernal awaited the arrival of his archaeologist. When Ana Lucia touched the bell for her second session, she decided that it was better to wait for Eduardo Matos to arrive. Mrs. Morales, today will accompany us a colleague of mine. He specializes in ancient history of Mexico. Don't you care? No way, doctor. As long as you take the urge to smoke, you can bring anyone. 15 minutes later, Eduardo Matos entered, a middle-aged man, gray beard and curious eyes behind thick glasses. Specialist in Tenochtitlan, he had spent more than a decade in the largest temple excavations. Ana Lucia, said Dr. Bernal, accommodating her in the leather armchair. Let's do like yesterday. Only relax and let the mind rest. Hypnosis continued normally until Ana Lucia entered a deep trance. His voice changed again, but this time it was not that of Itzel, the Aztec scribe. It was someone else, completely different. Ave Maria Purissima, sin conceived, Ana Lucia whispered, with an archaic Spanish accent. Sisters, it's time for the laudies. The Lord Bishop will come this afternoon for the blessing of the new ornaments. The Dr. Matos leaned forward, fascinated. Ana Lucia kept talking about an old Spaniard, mixed with Latin terms. I am sore hope of the Holy Trinity, the royal convent of Santa Catarina de Sena, in the City of Angels. Today is Friday of Tays, the year of the Lord of 1683. I need to prepare the chocolate for its illustrious, with cinnamon of Ceylon and white sugar of the Antilles. Her hands moved as if she was grinding cocoa into an invisible metate. Chocolate should be beaten 300 times to the right, as Mother Abbedisa taught us, neither one less nor one more, to make the perfect foam that pleases the bishop. The Dr. Matos wrote down everything feverishly. All Ana Lucia said was historically precise. The convent of Santa Catarina had existed in the 17th century, the Fridays of Tempriers were fasting days in the liturgical calendar, and the nuns, in fact, prepared chocolate for ecclesiastical dignitaries. But the most impressive came later, when Ana Lucia began to sing in Latin. Bene Creator Spiritus, mines turum visit, impli superna gratia, que tu creasti pedora. His voice was clear and tuned, with the technique of those who had been trained in Gregorian chant. After 5 minutes of impeccable execution, it was silent. The Dr. Eduardo Matos left the office completely shaken. On the way to his home in Coyoacán, he kept repeating what he had witnessed. Ana Lucia had not only sung in perfect Latin, but had accurately described the 17th century convent life, using liturgical terms that would take years to be dominated by any theologian. This is impossible, he murmured while driving through the peripheral. A woman without formal education cannot know these things. It is scientifically impossible. But the next day, when reviewing the archives of the Santa Catarina convent in the General Archive of the Nation, their skepticism began to crumble. In fact, there was a sour hope of the Holy Trinity in that convent, recorded between 1680 and 1684. The documents described it as a specialist in chocolate preparation and master in flat corner. Ana Lucia, in turn, had returned to the routine in the market, but the strange episodes continued. I didn't smoke anymore. The treatment had worked perfectly in this respect, but something deeper was happening to it. It was a Tuesday afternoon when it arrived at its Don Aurelio board, a Michoacan merchant selling air Puripecas tesonates. It featured copper bracelets and small metal figures with a special reddish tone. Ana, can you change these chiles for equivalent weight? My client in Pátzcuaro pays well for the good quality tree chile. Ana Lucia took one of the bracelets and, when touching her, her fingers trembled. We're holding invisible tools. The voice that came out of his throat was severe, hoarse, loaded with an accent that seemed to come from distant lands and a forgotten time. Mungu alinapan guvuya kupambana in mamivu. The words were dragged, as if each syllable carried the weight of centuries. Nilafanya kazi kataka mifugo ya bwanam ku, lakini siku ya gatabu ilapafika, nalipaga migu yake in Nikimbia. Nikimbia hadi mlamani, nikificha kama nyama aliyekwishinganga mizwa on watu. The experts looked at each other, astonished. Dr. Patterson, who had previously kept a serene stance, paled. With trembling hands, he took a block of notes and began writing frantically. This is Kiswahili, he murmured, almost to himself. An old dialect, with influences from Quiko and Quimbundo. But that's not all. His voice failed for a moment. This narrative is the account of a Cimarron, a fugitive slave in the mountains of Vera Cruz or Oaxaca, perhaps in the 17th century. Ana Lucia, or rather, the voice that now spoke through her, continued, as if telling a story already recorded in her memory. Watu wangu walitokam bali sana. Tolatem ben mabaki ya mzungo waliotua. Talikula chakula cha mtu mzima kwa siku moja. Tulipigana at Simba at Nyoka. Lakini hata hivyo, tulipenda uhuru kuliko chakula. Dr. Bernal, who until then tried to maintain a clinical air, could not contain the emotion. She is describing the escape of a group of African slaves, she has translated in a low voice with the help of Dr. Patterson. Speak of hunger, animal battles, a freedom that was worth more than life itself. Suddenly Ana Lucia's hands moved as if they were weaving something in the air. His fingers danced with precision that did not match his daily gestures. Kenga yanguo yetu alikawa in alama za nyumbani. Hila mstari yulikawa kumbukumbuya watatuliocha nyuma. Hila rungi alikawa salamu kwa waliatoka pamoja nasi. That. Dr. Patterson swallowed hard. These are patterns of Kenga, the traditional tissues of Eastern Africa. But it's not just a fabric, it's a code. The slaves used the designs to communicate, to keep the memory of their lands alive. The room was silent. Even the tinnitus of the air conditioner seemed to have ceased. Ana Lucia, or rather, the woman whose voice now inhabited her body, sighed deeply, as if she carried the tiredness of many lives. Sasa napumzika. Lakini mbegu zangu zamapanda. Watu wangu wako hapa. Wako katika damu ya watoto wa wangu. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the trance ended. Ana Lucia blinked, confused, as if she woke up from an intense dream. He ran a hand over his forehead, where drys of sweat shone. Doctors. Her voice was the usual, soft and a little hoarse for use again. I feel like it's running miles. And. He touched his lips with his fingers. My mouth hurts. As if you had spoken for hours. Dr. Bernal exchanged a look with Dr. Patterson before answering. Mrs. Morales, he said, with a respect that went beyond the professional. We just heard the voice of someone who crossed the ocean in inhuman conditions. Someone who fought not to be erased from the story. And somehow this memory lives in you. The voice that came out of Ana Lucia's lips was now rough as the wind that cuts the northern mountains, loaded with hardness forged in the bowels of the earth. Her fingers, once soft when touching her own face, now moved with the tired accuracy of those who spent decades crushing mineral between stones. Museum guards, real estate, watched that middle-aged woman who spoke as if she had lived centuries ago, with an authority that comes only from the most cruel experience. The silver is not only shine in the altars or the vice coins, he continued, the voice loaded with a bitter disdain. It also shines in the lungs of those who die spit it. My Jacinto said that Valenciana was an open mouth, swallowing men. And she never satiated herself. His eyes, previously lost in the void, now stared at the floor as if they saw it through him, to the dark galleries where mercury poisoned the air. Augustine, my son, learned. Walking in the darkness of the mines before learning to run in the sun. At the age of 8 I already knew the sound of collapse, the smell of fear when the candle goes out. One of the guards, a man in a face tanned by the sun of Zacatecas, took his hand to his chest as if his memory had hit him. He knew those stories, they were the same as his grandparents told at nights, when the wind howled between the mountains is sorry for those who were buried down there. Ana Lucia, or rather Esperanza, turned slowly to him, as if recognized him beyond time. You know, don't you? He asked, and his voice was now a hoarse whisper, almost a secret. Silver has memory. She keeps sweat, tears, the last sighs. When it melts in the ovens, it shouts. But no one hears. He closed his fists, and for a moment it seemed that his hands trembled not for weakness, but for a fury contained 2 centuries ago. They say the wealth of the New Spain is media in bars. Lie. He was mediated in widows, orphans, cough that never healed. The small group of people who had gathered around her remained silent. Even the children, who previously played in the gardens of the museum, had stopped to hear that voice that seemed to come from the depths of the earth. An elderly woman made the sign of the cross, murmuring something about penalty souls. Suddenly Ana Lucia, or the memory she spoke through her, lifted her head as if he heard something distant. Her body stiffened, and for a moment it seemed she was going to fall. But then, with a slow movement, he led his hand to his chest and began to sing again, this time with a dragged, almost funeral melody. Luna de plata, luna traitor. What alumbras la cruz y el dolor. Sin tu light you see la mina abierta. Why no al minero en su prisión? The Zacatecan guard couldn't stand it. He took off his hat, pressing him against his heart as if it were a farewell. I was sick, he whispered. That's the song my grandmother sang when someone died in the mine. She said it was to guide the spirits back home. Dr. Bernal, who had been running to hear the reports of the museum employees, watched everything with a mixture of scientific fascination and horror. He knew the symptoms of regressive hypnosis, but that went beyond any theory. They were not just words, it was presence. As if the past had found a crack in time and leaned against Ana Lucia's shoulders to finally be heard. When she opened her eyes again, she was Ana Lucia Morales's, confused, frightened, shaking hands and breathing. What happened? He asked, looking around as if he woke up from a dream he couldn't remember. Why are everyone looking at me like this? No one answered immediately. The weight of what had just happened was too big for words. But the Zacatecan guard, his voice embargoed, reached out and lightly touched his arm. Senora, he said, we have just told us things that only the dead should know. A shiver traveled his body. That song she had heard her in her childhood, sung by the great-grandfather, who was also a miner. When Ana Lucia finished singing, she remained motionless for long minutes, her eyes closed, her breath fast. Then he blinked several times and looked around, disoriented. Where am I? He murmured, running his hands on his face as if he tried to wake up from a dream. What am I doing here? The guards approached with caution, exchanging concerned looks. Madam, you are in the House of Coin, said one of them, with a soft voice. Are you feeling well? Do you need us to call someone? Ay, Dios mío. Ana Lucia took her hands to her forehead, as if a sudden pain hit her. Again, this happened again. I need to reach the doctor's office. The news of the incident reached Dr. Bernal's ears even before Ana Lucia came to the consultation. When she finally entered the room, she didn't only find the usual experts, but also a new presence, Dr. Carmen Castañeda, historian specializing in the colonial mining of Zacatecas. Mrs. Morales, said Dr. Bernal, with a tone that mixed curiosity and worry, we told us what happened this morning at the coin house. Do you remember having been there? Vaguely, Doctor, Ana Lucia replied, rubbing her temples. It's like when we wake up from a very alive dream, but can only remember fragments. He paused, confused. Do you know something about the Zacatecas mines? She denied her head even before he answered. I just know there's a lot of silver there, but that everyone knows. Why question? What followed at the hypnosis session went beyond any expectation. Esperanza Ruiz's personality emerged with overwhelming force. For 2 hours, Ana Lucia described, with technical precision, the process of silver extraction in colonial mines, using specialized terms that Dr. Castañeda recognized as authentic 18th century. The patio method was brought from Europe, but we adapted it to our lands, Ana Lucia said, with a voice that was no longer yours. Mix the ground silver with a zug, ordinary and masterful salt, and let it stand for weeks until you amalgame. The historian wrote frantically. This was the exact description of the patio benefit, a mercury amalgamation technique used in the 17th century Mexican mines. But a zug kills, Ana Lucia continued, the voice loaded with an old pain. Those who work with him start to tremble without control. First hands, then the whole body. In the end, we lost reason. My compadre Anselmo ended up talking to the tunnels alone, persecuted by demons that only he saw. Could you describe the mine La Valenciana? Asked Dr. Castañeda, containing the emotion. It's over 500 meters deep, Ana Lucia replied without hesitation. The main well descends in spiral, with rest every 50 meters so that the tenteros can breathe. In the background, the galleries extend like roots of a giant tree, following the silver veins that run through the bowels of the Cerro. The description was impeccable. The La Valenciana mine was, in fact, one of the deepest of the colonial time, and its spiral structure with rest platforms was a technical detail known only by historical mining specialists. And the tenteros? Asked the historian, the pen shaking in her hands. It is the men who carry the ore from the background to the surface, Ana Lucia explained, her embargoed voice. They climbed up to 6 stone arrobas on leather caps, slide stairs, and tunnels full of poisonous gases. Many fall into the emptiness, others suffix. It is the hardest work a Christian can do. Her eyes filled with tears, as if a sadness accumulated for centuries invades her. My son Augustin was a tenter. He was 18 years old and the strongest muscles of the whole mine, but the sag gases gradually burned. First I saw blurry, then only shadows. In the end, he was completely blind and still continued working, guiding himself only by touch and sound, because if he didn't work, we didn't eat. What happened to him? Asked Dr. Castañeda, almost without voice. Fell into the main well at dawn in December. It was 20-4 years. We found him 3 days later, embraced his leather doormat, as if, even in death, still carried the ore that took his view and life. The silence that was installed in the office was dense, almost palpable. Even the most skeptical academics felt they were facing something that surpassed any scientific explanation. When Ana Lucia awoke from hypnosis, Dr. Castañeda observed her with almost reverential respect. Mrs. Morales, said the historian, with a trembling voice, you just described life in 17th century mines with accuracy that would take years to any researcher to acquire. Knows technical terms, specific processes, and everyday details that only appear in file documents, consulted by very few people. Ana Lucia looked at her with tired eyes, as if she woke up too long a nightmare. Doctor, I don't know anything about minas. The only contact I have with silver is the coins that customers give me on the market. But that night, when he arrived home, in Cologne doctors, Ana Lucia woke up at 3 in the morning with a taste of land and mercury in the mouth and a song of miners echoing in her head, as if he came from the depths of a forgotten mountain. Ana Lucia's case had already surpassed the limits of the academy. On a rainy day of April, Dr. Ian Stevenson arrived in Mexico accompanied by a team of researchers at the University of Virginia. With more than 20 years studying cases of reincarnation around the world, Stevenson had documented ill-hairs of reports, but had never found a case in which a single person expressed so many distinct historical personalities and all verifiable. What intrigues me most, he confessed to Dr. Bernal on the first night in Mexico, is that all these personalities look like an invisible wire. They are Mexican women who lived at crucial moments of historical transition. It is no coincidence. But the personality that would emerge in the first session with the American researcher would be the most impactful of all, and the one that would finally reveal the hidden pattern behind Ana Lucia's extraordinary case. The session was scheduled for Monday morning at Dr. Bernal's office, but this time they decided to record everything with professional audio and video equipment. Stevenson wanted to document every detail, every gesture, every change of expression, every word. Ana Lucia arrived nervous. The presence of so many foreign doctors intimidated her, but Dr. Bernal reassured her as usual. It's equal to the other times, Ana Lucia. Only today we'll record. Don't you care? No, doctor, she said, breathing deeply. If this helps you understand what's going on with me, which records everything you want. Hypnosis followed its normal course, until, upon reaching the deep trance, something completely different emerged. His posture changed radically, his back straightened, his shoulders squares, and an expression of firmness and determination he had never demonstrated on his face. When he spoke, his voice was strong, determined, with a markedly North-No accent. I'm Adelita Ramirez, from Chihuahua. Pancho Villa Army Salidra. I rode all north of Mexico, fighting the months. These are not just memories of other lives. I'm not just a canal for the voices of the past. I am the bridge between what was and what still needs to be. She paused, as if organizing the words before letting them flow. His fingers gently tightened the petals of the sempachil, as if they sought strength in the fragility of those flowers. All these women Itzel, the Maya healer, Sore Hope, the rebel nun Arandera, the warrior Puripeka, Ashaki, the African slave who became a leader, Esperanza, the Guanajuato Mining Company, Adelita, the Ladrara, are not my past lives of mine. They are parts of me. They are the living memory of a country that was built with pain, but also with resistance. Each carries an open wound from Mexico's history, and through me, these wounds ask to be seen. To be healed. Dr. Stevenson, who had previously kept an analytical posture, felt a knot in his throat. In his years of study, he had recorded cases of children who remembered previous lives with impressive details, but had never witnessed something so close to a collective mission. As if the past were using Ana Lucia not only to be remembered but to act. And why today, Ana Lucia? Asked Dr. Bernal, his voice slightly shaky. Why is this day, October 2nd, is it so important? She closed her eyes for a moment, as if heard a distant voice. Because today is not just about me. It is about all who fell by fighting for a fairer Mexico. In 1968, right here, in Mexico City, hundreds of young people were massacred for daring dream of change. As well as Adelita and his companions in Chihuahua. As well as the miners of Guanajuato. Just like the original peoples who resisted the achievement. The same story repeats itself, only the faces and dates change. She opened her eyes, and in them there was a flame that didn't just belong to her. Today I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to say that the fight is not over. A heavy silence filled the room. The researchers exchanged unbelieving glances. Some of the journalists wrote frantically, while others simply stopped writing, absorbed by the intensity of those words. You're saying, I intervened UNAM anthropologist with caution that these memories are not random? What is there a purpose in them? Ana Lucia nodded. It is no coincidence that I, a poor woman, daughter of a seamstress and a bricklayer, have access to these voices. It is no chance that they have chosen this moment to manifest, when Mexico is once again on the verge of a crisis, when poverty again squeezed, when the powerful continues to decide the fate of the humble. He extended his hands, as if offered something invisible to those present. They chose me because I understand what it is to fight every day. Because I know what it is to be invisible until the moment you decide to get up. Dr. Stevenson finally broke his professional silence. Ana Lucia, and what do you think should be done with this? With everything you discovered? She smiled a sad smile, but full of strange peace. It is not me who should decide. I'm just the messenger. But if they ask me what I would do, I would say, remember. Remember Adelita when a woman is silenced. Remember Arandera when original people are disrespected. Remember Ashaki when a black man is treated as less. Remember Esperanza, the mining company, when a worker is explored until exhaustion. His voice gained strength, as if carrying the weight of many throats. The memory is not just for crying. It is to act. So that no one can say we didn't know. So that no one can pretend that this is not our struggle either. At this point, the Sempachil petals fell from their hands, spreading across the floor like small color points in the middle of the office. And when Ana Lucia spoke again, it was with a certainty that she transcended her own life. Today is not just October 2nd. Today is every day when Mexico refused to die. In Estoy loca, he repeated, with a firmness that silenced to Dr. Bernal's deepest doubts. Her fingers, once trembling, now closed with determination on the edge of the table, as if they anchored not only her body, but centuries of voices that spoke through her. I don't have evil spirits about me. I have something much more beautiful. I have the memory. His eyes, those same eyes that hours before they seemed lost among past's mists, now shone with a light that wasn't just yours. It was the reflection of old bonfires, candles lit on forgotten altars, of looks that resisted the darkness of 5 centuries. Ana Lucia straightened her back, as if she suddenly carried not only her own weight, but that of countless women who, before her, had curved their shoulders under the burden of history. I'm Ana Lucia Morales, he said, and every syllable sounded like an oath. Seller of spices in the market of San Juan, mother of Carlos and Maria Elena, widow of Esteban. But I am also all the women who lived and died on this land in the last 500 years. I am the living memory of Mexico. Dr. Bernal leaned forward, his fingers intertwined as if they tried to contain the emotion he threatened to overflow. There was no trance there, no delirium. Ana Lucia spoke with a sharp clarity, as those who unfold an old map before the routine blind eyes. His voice had no tone rehearsed of the books, it was rough as the earth, sweet as the newly hired corn, stubborn as the roots that break the concrete. Itzel taught me that knowledge doesn't die when the body goes out, he continued, and his voice seemed to echo from the office walls, as if other throats accompanied her. Sore hope showed me that faith can survive any achievement, even when they burn our temples and force us to kneel before strange gods. Arandira, her fingers shivered slightly, he revealed to me that indigenous traditions are not gray, they are in our hands when we knead the mass of the tortilla, in the rhythm of our steps, in the way we name the stars. A pause. A sigh that carried the salt of the undressed tears. Asaki reminded me that Mexico is also made of African blood, he said, and for the first time his voice broke, not pain but of serene anger. Of pain that crossed the chained ocean, but which has become drums, dances, children who inherited resistance as they inherit the skin color. Esperanza, the miner, proved to me that the poor were always the foundations of this country, even when they buried us alive in the bowels of the earth to extract their silver. And Adelita, he smiled, almost imperceptible, he confirmed me that Mexican women never stopped fighting, even when they called us crazy, witches, traitors. Ana Lucia got up, and her steps toward the window were so light that they didn't seem not to touch the floor. Outside, the Metropolitan Cathedral rose over the ruins of the Mayor Temple, like a stone reminder, all that Mexico was had been built on layers of stroke. NCOs and screams. She leaned the palm of her hand on the cold glass, as if she could, through him, touch the stones that kept secrets. Do you know why all these women live on me? He asked, without turning around. Because Mexico needs to remember. Remember that we are a fabric people with wires of many blood, many languages, many memories that refuse to rot. Remember that while men killed themselves by lands and crowns, we were here, parking their children, planting the corn, keeping the seeds of the next harvest. We were those who buried the dead and those who again sowing life the next day. His voice grew, not in volume, but in density, as if each word were a stone thrown into standing waters, creating waves that would not go out. But I lack a memory, he confessed, and suddenly, his whole body seems to shrink, as if something pulled her inside. The most recent. The most painful. The one who has called me on sleepless nights, which makes me wake up with the taste of gunpowder in my mouth. Closing his eyes to Ana Lucia was no longer a search, but of recognition. When he opened them again, there was no longer the spice saleswoman before them. There was a young woman of 19 years, her eyes burning from a mixture of fear and determination, her hands still shakes of holding posters, her voice hoarse to scream slogans under the sun of October. "My name is Carmen Rodriguez," he said, and the entire office seemed to contain his breath. "I am 19 years old and study psychology at the National University. Today is October 2nd, 1968, and I am in the square of three cultures because I believe that young people can change this country." The silence that followed was so thick that it seemed possible to cut it with a knife. Everyone there knew what that day meant. Everyone knew that somewhere among Ana Lucia's words, the story was repeating not as a farce, but as a knife stuck in a wound that never healed. "We took months manifesting us peacefully," he continued, and his voice was now a tense thread, about to break. "We want freedom of expression. We want the government to stop killing students. We want," he swallowed, "living in a country where one can think differently without this being a death sentence. We do not ask for the impossible. We asked for justice." His fingers were confused, as if they still held the arm of a fallen companion. It's 6 in the afternoon. The rally is ending. People begin to disperse when the soldiers appear. At first we thought it was just another intimidation, as always. But then come the lights of cane, green, red, and suddenly, his voice failed, hell opens. Ana Lucia began to tremble, not as who remembers, but as if she relies. Her knees weakened, and for a moment she seemed to collapse. Dr. Stevenson moved to help her, but she raised her hand, stopping him. No. She needed to be there, standing, even if it was just a few more seconds. "The shots come from all sides," he whispered, and his words were bullets piercing the air. "We run, shout, throw ourselves to the floor. There are children crying, mothers calling for their children. I try to help an injured boy in his leg when you pause, and the sound that came out of his throat was not a cry, but an ancestral lament. I feel the bullet in my chest." Tears were freely dripping now, but his eyes were open, fixed at one point beyond the walls, as if they saw something that only the dead could see. I fall beside the boy. I feel the warm blood dripping, I feel my body cooling. But the last thing I think before I die is not in pain. It is not in fear. Her voice was a breath. I think someone has to remember. Someone has to tell us that we were not violent. That we only wanted a Mexico where it was possible to dream without dreaming our lives. When Ana Lucia opened her eyes again, it was like returning from a place where time didn't exist. Her gaze found the cameras that recorded everything, and for a moment it seemed that she didn't see the lens, but the souls of those who, decades later, would watch that testimony. "That's why I'm here," he said, and every word was a nail closed on the wall of oblivion. "That's why we're all here. So that Mexico does not forget. So that they know that Itzel died defending his culture, that Sorhope has lived protecting the faith of his people, who resisted the achievement with his P. Ropria's hands. That Asaki crossed the ocean with hope as the only luggage. That Esperanza, the miner, gave her life for the silver that enriched a country that never gave her anything in return. That Adelita fought for social justice. What Carmen, here, his voice broke, that Carmen died for freedom." She approached the makeshift small altar, where the swippling flowers were already beginning to wither, as if they had fulfilled their purpose. With slow, almost ritualistic gestures, he took one of the petals and held her against his chest, as if it were the last breath of all those who had spoken through it. "We are all Mexico," he said, and his voice was now a choir. We are all the same soul that was reborn over and over to remember, to resist, to move on. And as long as there are women like me, humble, hardworking, who get up every day to fight for their families, Mexico will never die. With a movement that was at the same time a goodbye and a promise, Ana Lucia lifted the flower of Cempasúchil toward the ceiling, as if offered not to a god, but to time. This is my derrenda for the Day of the Dead, he said. Not just for my dead, but for all the dead in Mexico. For those who fell in Tenochtitlan, to those who died in the mines, for those who rotted in the plantations, for those who bleed in the revolution, for those who were massacred in Tlatelolco. For all who gave their lives so that we could be here, breathing, even if it is an air still poisoned with impunity. Dr. Stevenson approached her, his eyes damp. In all his research years, he had never seen anything so close to the sacred. Mrs. Morales, she murmured, her choked voice. In all my career, I never witnessed something so deep. You are not just a case of reincarnation. It is proof that love for the homeland, the thirst for justice, the stubbornness of life, swallowed, can be stronger than death itself. Ana Lucia smiled, and that smile was as old as the pyramids, as young as the corn that springs up after the rain. Doctor, he said, putting a hand on his shoulder. I'm not special. I'm just a Mexican woman. And all Mexican women carry these memories within themselves. Only it fell to me remind them aloud. He walked to the door, the steps now light, as if he had left behind not a burden but a seed planted. As he crossed the threshold, he stopped for a moment and turned for the last time. His eyes, who had been Itzel, Carmen's sore Esperanza, they shone with a quiet certainty. Because Mexico is eternal, he said. And we, the ones we gave you, created, defend you, and remember you. He paused, as if I enjoy the words, we are eternal too. And with that, Ana Lucia Morales left the office. The investigators who were there knew that they had witnessed something that would transcend their reports, their theories, their careers. It was not just a case to be studied. It was a call. Ana Lucia's case would become one of the most analyzed in the history of parapsychology, but her true importance was not in the academic archives. It was in the fact that from then on, whenever someone heard talking about Tlatelolco, from the Guanajuato mines, the women who made the resistance of this country with strands of pain and hope would also remember his face. Of your voice. Of your words. Because some stories do not belong only to the past. They are the breath that keeps us alive.